What's up, everybody? It's Connor. We're back for another one of our affiliate partner interviews. So, we've done a number of industries, but today we're going to be talking all about contractors. So, it's no mistake, when you buy a house, there are probably some things you're going to want to do to said house. And you may not know which projects are worth doing, which ones should I do, who should I contract out, what can I maybe try and do myself, and just all the little questions therein. So, I have with me here Dave Burris. So, I'm going to let Dave go for a second and introduce himself.
Yeah, so I'm David Burris of P&H Renovations, local renovator and Realtor, actually here with Connor in the KW Morrison office. Our team does probably about 80% residential renovations, about 20% commercial. Everything in and around and on a home, basically we touch. So we do a lot of work with agents, with homeowners, helping out people who are getting their house ready to list, buying a place and fixing it up, or just making changes to a house they own.
So we got about 10 questions that I want to rip through. And yes, I am going to be reading off my phone. So don't crucify me as I go through this. I just want to make sure we get the right questions. So you just mentioned a little bit about kind of a blend of residential and commercial. Have you always been doing residential commercial? Did it start residential? Did it start commercial? Just give us kind of a little backstory of where you got to,
Yeah, I can give you a quick little backstory of myself and how we do what we do. So I actually grew up in the renovation and development business. Pretty much everyone in my family was involved in real estate or renovations in some capacity, whether it be large municipal contracts, commercial stuff, or just residential. Everything, literally from schools and township buildings to Trenton Thunder Stadium here in New Jersey to regular single-family homes, additions, renovations, that sort of thing. So that's what I kind of grew up with as a kid, and a lot of uncles, cousins, dad, etc. were all just involved in that. So on the starter side, I got involved with residential first when I started my renovation business, and kind of grew from there into really kind of just having opportunities be handed to me on the commercial side, updating office buildings, commercial roofing, looking at some solar projects for clients as well. So we do a lot of residential, some commercial, and kind of work all over the state into Philly and even down Delaware.
What would you say is sort of a specialty of you guys? Like if there were some projects, I know, with contractors, it's like most contractors do everything. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, a lot of contractors will tell you, hey, kitchens and bathroom remodels, that's really our bread and butter. Mm-hmm. And then we do a lot of the off projects as well that sometimes go with them. So if you were to decide to answer, hey, we do everything, but this is where we find our niche, what would that be for you?
Yeah, so I would say, our specialty and what we do a lot of would probably be two different questions, and I can answer two different ways. So what our specialty would be, I kind of hear that as like what sets us apart, what makes us different, that kind of thing. And so what I would say in that capacity is communication, creative thinking, problem solving, solutions. That's one thing that I've been passionate about ever since getting involved in this business, is just always be able to come with solutions to problems and thinking outside the box in ways that the client may not even know options are available. So I would say that kind of sets us apart. But as far as products that we do, we do everything. What I like to tell people is, agents will call and say, hey, Dave, I got this punch list from inspections, and it's just a lot of minor things. And usually in that case, we can do those, but typically only if they're married to a larger project. So it doesn't make financial sense for us to come out, send two guys and a truck, licensed, insured, the whole thing, to be able to come out there and do a small punch list. Usually that's a better fit for a handyman to help out with something like that. We can do that in conjunction with a larger project. But on the smaller side, what we'll do is, if there's a flooring install to be done, whether it's wood or LVP or carpet, if there's, a couple rooms that need to be painted, we'll do that, powder rooms, etc., that sort of thing. Replacing windows in a house, replacing a roof. But that kind of goes up from there. We do a lot of bathrooms, a lot of kitchens, a lot of additions as well. And so we kind of work, like I said, literally everything inside, outside, and around a house we will do. We don't do pools. That's a specific contractor who's doing that sort of thing. We do have partners for landscape, hardscape, to kind of include that in services as well. But I think most of what we do, kitchens, baths, additions, and a lot of roofing as well.
So basically, if I'm going to try and cut through some of that, it's, look, we're not we're not really going to come out and just like patch a little drywall in one room just because you accidentally knock something into it. But if I decide, hey, after knocking that one little hole, we decide we may want to blow this entire room out and add an extra 1,000 square feet and an extra bathroom.
Exactly.
We might want to do that and then patch the drywall as it comes.
Exactly.
So one of my things, I think the biggest concern, right, that a public has, especially when they meet with a contractor, would be, are they really going to understand the vision of what I'm trying to accomplish here? And also, how am I going to ensure that they actually do the quality of work that I'm expecting?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess there's always a buyer has a vision,
mm-hmm.
you have a vision, and you try through communication
mm-hmm.
to marry those two things.
Yeah.
But inevitably, when a project's done, there may be some misalignment of what you thought or whatever. So walk me through maybe kind of just the process of how you try and get on the same page of that vision.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you try and finish a product? Do you always do it right to what the exact vision of the customer is? Or if you think like, hey, I understand what you're trying to get to, but as a finished product, it really has to look this way.
Yeah.
So talk to me about kind of aligning those visions.
I mean, it's a great question, and it's quite literally the case in every single project. I mean, it's always going to start out where there's an idea of what the client has in their mind. We do, and I'll walk you through our process. So we do our initial consult. We always request information via our website first, so you can share a lot of helpful information to get us started. When we do a discovery call, we're already starting at step 2 instead of step 1. So working through those questions, working through the information provided, what the expectations are, budget, timeline, are we financing this? Is it a cash thing? Do you need a lender tool for possibly an after renovation value loan or something like that? Getting through all that, and then we have our on-site consult. And so that's when we kind of drill down. We're in the space, we're talking, we're looking around, we're taking measurements, we're discussing. And so after that initial consult, typically, depending on the size of the project, typically within a week or 2, we will present our initial proposal. And so that's going to be an itemized list of everything in the project with everything built out, some allowance pricing in there for stuff like electrical and plumbing and some of the, if there's not decisions made on materials, selections, that sort of thing. It's always good to put that as an allowance price because we don't know yet, but we can base it upon this number, which can fluctuate up or down. Materials obviously is if you want to spend more, you can spend more or you can spend less. And the electrical and plumbing allowances they're pretty tight for what we know, but whenever we start projects, there's some things that we don't know. And so once we go through that stage, within a day or 2, we like to digest that on a call with the customer just to make sure there's any questions they have. Sometimes we're asked to present a whole lot more than they actually probably want to accomplish, but just so they see pricing. So we can decide to redline and remove certain things, tweak certain things. And then typically what happens is we'll present a follow-up proposal. And in a lot of times with a kitchen renovation, with a bathroom renovation, or with an addition, there's going to be plans to go along with that as well. So not only are we presenting numbers and scope of work, we're also presenting plans so the client can get an idea of like, okay, this is what you've taken from my communication and translated onto paper for us to look at so we can say yes or no or tweak something. And a lot of times in kitchens, we'll have suggestions on site. Even in bathrooms, we'll have suggestions on site like, hey, I know you want to do it this way. Maybe you can add this feature or space these cabinets out this way, because then you could add in something that they might have known existed. A lot of folks are removing their microwaves from counter, from over the oven, and hoods are very popular these days. So what comes from that? Under the counter microwave, and that's something that a lot of folks sometimes are not considering inside of renovation projects. So that gets us to our secondary proposal, and most times we're either on the nose and we're ready to move forward at that point, or there are some additional tweaks because it's an evolution of a process. Thoughts change, ideas change, needs might change, wants might change as you learn about more things. And then typically, once we even start the project, there are going to be changes. We see it a lot where, you may even think that, we started with this budget and that's what we discussed and we're all committed to sticking to that budget. However, once the project's underway, a lot of times there are add-ons. Oh, you know what? While we're doing this, probably makes sense if we do this instead, or in conjunction with this. And the project itself will evolve as well. So, I mean, really, it's going to be an amoeba of a vision that takes shape as we go in most cases. Sometimes if we're working with a design partner, there is a vision to start, and that vision just gets carried out because the designer has already been in the house with the client for a number of weeks or even months, planning everything to a T. And so in that case, we just come in and execute. But if we're a part of the design process, it's going to be a bit of a moving target until we actually start making these decisions inside the house. And so decision making and phases of the project usually dictate what the final outcome is. And it may not be what the thought was when we first had our meeting, but it's always something everyone's happy with because they've custom crafted decisions along the process.
So I think the word that I'm hearing, if I were the contractor and I would want to pick my ideal client, I think the word that you would probably look for in a client would be flexible. Someone who can come in the beginning, have that vision of what they want, but also be amenable to someone who does the trade regularly, who would offer maybe, hey, I understand that you're looking at this vision. Can I ask you, do you really need to have that microwave above the stove? What we've found in other projects is by actually removing that, putting it in a lower cabinet space, we're able to give you a much better look, a feel, and here's the way it would change the cost and scope and timing of the project. Yeah. So you're looking for someone who can at least just be kind of pivot with you. Say like, and my thing too, having done some mild home repair just for my own edification, I always know that when I start a project, in a perfect world from that YouTube video, I only need these things. Inevitably, you open up a wall, there's something else that has to be addressed before you can even get into the scope. And I just want to hear it for like the sanity of everyone. When you're recommending these changes, are you just trying to upcharge me to get more money, or are you actually legitimately offering something that you think would be better for the project?
Yeah. So that's actually, it's funny. I just got off a conference call here, and we're always going to include everything itemized on our estimate. With electrical has all the scope we're going to include, and then a line item charge, right? And that brings you down to the subtotal. And so, quite literally, we may make some recommendations that will be better. You can say yes or no. Most of the changes that we see are once things start happening. And I'll give you a recent kitchen renovation as an example. We started this kitchen renovation. On the scope is we're doing 4 outlets. This, I think it was like 5 switches, and we're doing this and that. And as the electricians are on site, and as we're working through the process, the client said, "Oh, you know what? I should probably actually change these 10 outlets, and I should, these 7 switches instead of that." Those types of things are typical. What we include in the initial estimate, because that's all they want to touch. Usually, it makes sense to do more and do it all just at once when everything's open. It's an easier way to do it, and it's going to be more cost effective to do it now than it will be. Let's wait 6 months, and then we're going to rough in new electric or change out switches. It doesn't make financial sense to do it. So those types of changes come along frequently. We do make some suggestions based upon what other people have done in their house. And really, if it's a yes, great. If it's a no, that's fine too. But yeah, we're not looking to. In an ideal world, we have all the decisions made. I'll add this to your ideal client. Flexibility is important. Being able to work together, but decisiveness. Even it wouldn't matter who you work with. Being decisive on what your finished selections are, and really having that all kind of set as early as possible, not only helps with the project flow and getting things done in a quick fashion, but also your sanity, because then you're not having to be ask questions throughout the entire process. What's your selection here? What's your selection there? Did you make a section on countertop? Is your tile selection ready for backsplash? Your vanity, it's due this date. Have you ordered it yet? What's happening? That's all if the client's in charge of that. But if we're in charge of that, you have to let us know so we can order it. So decisiveness is also very important. But
so I want to switch gears here a little bit. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think with any project, there's going to be a plus or minus 10%. You might think of a better number, but I think with any project, don't go into it just saying like, okay, well, our very, very, very first quote was $8,000. That means at the very
that's
end,
exactly what it's going to be.
Right, yeah. That's a joke. And it might be less, right? There may be some things you can cut some down, or there's an overage, or there's an allowance. So So I just want to do a kind of a compare contrast here.
Sure.
So people who may watch this are just thinking about improving their home as it stands for their livability.
Mm-hmm.
There are other people who are doing things that may be part of a real estate transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know a lot of times when you have a home inspection, you're getting that punch list.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting the handyman punch list of, hey, we just need like these 7 odds and ends kind of done.
Yeah.
So do you find that, I guess the first question is, do you find you get a lot of work that's through the transaction needing to be done by closing? Or is most of the work that you guys do kind of once you've gotten the house, once you're kind of settled, okay, now that we just moved in, we've been here 2 months, we're now kind of ready to start that big project? Which one is it more for you? Kind of more real estate transaction stuff, or after the fact, and now it's more about the livability of the home?
I will say that most of the work that we do is after the fact and not during the transaction. A lot of the stuff comes up during the transaction, may come up during the inspection window to your point. But a lot of times what folks are doing in lieu of having, if we're, subject to the buyer as our client and there's stuff on the inspection, a lot of times the seller is not going to choose us to cover X, Y, and Z. If there's an issue like a damage somewhere that needs to be fixed, sometimes that happens before the transaction takes place, or it's negotiated in the real estate deal that X amount of dollars is held in escrow. And then we're typically doing the work after the fact because the buyer wants to choose their contractor, but it doesn't make sense for them to pay for work to be done during the transaction because they don't own the house yet and anything could happen, right? So typically funds are going to be held in escrow, or if there's a negotiation around concessions, buyer is amenable to seller's concession, and then we're contracted to do the work to fix something that had a leak or replace a roof, or there's some structural elements that need to be done and it's been discussed and settled and engineers have approved everything. So mostly after the fact.
So one of the other aspects I know too is that, I go to every home inspection for every buyer we put under contract. And over time, code changes, technology changes, things change about the standards of building homes, what goes into that uniform building code and all those. So I guess, again, a kind of a two-pronged question, but one, there are things that are code related. And I guess that's fairly reasonable to be up to date with because there's sort of an all blast to all industry professionals. Hey, we now need to move to this type of construction nail as opposed to this old construction nail for whatever reason, right? Yeah. So that's kind of straightforward, just by the book, black and white stuff. But there's also kind of trends. There's the millennial white and gray that threw up on everyone's kitchen over the last 5 years. There's a lot of hunter green starting to come in with gold finishes. There's a lot of these just kind of design factors. So how do you guys stay up to date? I think the code aspect might be a more straightforward answer, but then how do you personally kind of stay more up to date with just the emerging trends and the visual trends and those aesthetic trends, and then coaching clients in that first meeting about like, hey, well, you may want something that's a more updated kitchen. So talk to me through kind of the building code and then also just like the aesthetic trends.
Yeah. So code is pretty straightforward. Just knowing what the new codes are, studying up and making sure we're brushed up on stuff. Having engineer and architect partners that we work with is super helpful for that kind of stuff too. Something people may not know, and this is a little tidbit. So when you're doing permitted work or when you're looking to do an addition or move some walls or make some changes, anything moving electrical, plumbing, walls, that sort of thing, or adding, should be, permitted work. The township wants to know about it, what's going on in the houses, so that they can kind of put their stamp of approval and make sure everything's okay. And if you're doing that, you can either go with a structural engineer or an architect's plans that the township can approve, or homeowners can do owner stamp plans where they draw them, or they have someone who may be a friend or an architect who's good at doing this and they can draw them, they agree to them, and they can stamp them. But making sure the township is going to make sure certain things are to code for checks and balances. But on our end, having the right partners in place to make sure it's built in our presentation of the permit and the plans is very important out of the gate. On the design trend side, we work with a number of designers locally here in South Jersey, Philly. We have an in-house team as well on design. We do a lot of, your example was kitchens and different trends that are happening there. We're constantly working in homes with all these new trends that are emerging. And everyone's got new ideas, and you can kind of see that surface, the gray and white that you mentioned. To let everyone know, shaker cabinets in gray and white is still very popular. People are styling them differently. They're maybe not going full tilt gray and white everywhere for everything with brushed nickel and this and that as the trend. But, a lot of folks are buying simple, basic, shaker cabinets and spraying them custom colors to cut costs and not have to go the custom route. Mixing metals is really popular. Whether it's a brass tone with a rough bronze, maybe even chrome is back, people. I don't know if you know that or not. Maybe you do. Chrome is back, and in very specific cases, and it looks great. But staying on top of trends is important. We're plugged into a bunch of designers. It's funny. Me, myself, I have always been a giant HGTV fan. I was the guy in college watching the shows in the lounge by myself, and everyone's making fun of me. I'm like, I like this stuff. This is what I'm all about. So staying plugged into the trends and what are happening as well is very helpful as well. And it's easier for me because I have a wife at home she's not an interior designer. She's a flair for it, but she's a graphic and web designer and is passionate about all kinds of design, all kinds of art. And so, I have the little bug in my ear that tells me like, this is popular now. This is popular now. So it's a little cheat code that I have. Yeah.
So kind of just like the codes themselves, uniform code, fairly straightforward, by the book. Architecture engineers are going to keep you in line with that. And
Yeah.
then on the flip side, look, we're all on social media. We're on
Mhm.
TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're following these pages. We're
Yeah.
following DIY pages. We're following
Absolutely.
what other people are doing and trends that might be going on in Oklahoma or in Portland or
Yeah.
wherever. But there's a word that I just threw out that I want to kind of pull in. Now, look, there are a lot of projects that totally should be done by a contractor. Like, if I'm putting an addition on my home, I might know a lot of YouTube University stuff,
Yeah.
but that's probably a scope outside of what I would realistically want to take on myself.
Sure.
When you do talk to somebody and they said, hey, David, look, I got about 10 projects that I want to do, but really these 4 I think I can handle myself. Are there any projects that you would recommend to people who are sitting at home saying, like, oh, I have some projects that I'm going to want to do, and I'm trying to figure out which one should I try and do myself to save some money? And what are the ones that I really shouldn't touch? Now, I think easy, like plumbing and electrical, I really would argue should be done by trade professionals. There are some other things that start to blend in that gray area. So from your opinion, what are the projects that fall squarely on that, guys, you probably do this yourself. What are the projects that probably fall squarely in that you should really get a contract to do this? And then maybe what's like the most common one that comes up in that gray area?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and we get this a lot because it's a pretty regular way for someone to save money on the renovation if they have a budget to stick to. Asking, hey, what things can I do myself? Us suggesting if that's what you're looking to do, you can do these things. The first thing to know is your own ability, bandwidth, skill set, and all of that, because the last thing you want to do is spend your time to try and do something and some money and then it not come out the way you want and then have to then go pay for it again. Because I always try and coach people, you can do things yourself or you can pay someone to do it, and you're either going to spend your time or your money to get that accomplished. Now, it depends. I mean, if you're younger and you have more time on your hands and you want to tackle something and you want to try and make it work, that's a great way to save money, right? If you're a bit older, maybe more established, and time isn't a luxury, you're spending time with family, you're spending time at work, you're spending time with leisure activities, but money is more disposable than time is right now. That's typically the way you're going to lean in that situation. So I think figuring out what you want to spend, whether it's time or money, what your abilities are, and kind of having a gut check on that. People can learn as they go, and I know plenty of people that didn't really have a background in something and then did the YouTube University thing or got coaching from a friend or family member and did some nice work. The most typical things that we see is, hey, if I do my own demo, how much can I save? And that's a great question to ask if you're interviewing a contractor and you want to save money. It's going to cost you your time, but it's a way to do that. Another thing is, hey, if I paint for myself, what would the cost savings be? And we usually have painting as a line item there. Demo for us is included in our construction line item, which includes demolition and reconstruction and all that kind of stuff. But painting is its own line item. So you can see quickly how much will I save if I do this myself. Other projects we'll see people tackle, some minor carpentry work, some built-in stuff, shelves, that sort of thing. Sometimes folks are handy enough. They want to do their own finish electric. I can install the switches. I can install the outlet. I can install the light fixtures and that sort of thing. To your point, plumbing and electrical scare a lot of people because it's electric. It could shock you. It could kill you. It could, if it's not done properly, it's a fire hazard. So just really knowing where your abilities are and where you're comfortable is helpful. But if you want to do the finish electric yourself, just doing the installation, a lot of people are comfortable installing a light switch. It is actually pretty straightforward. You can turn the electric off. You can turn it back on. It's relatively straightforward and safe. Plumbing is another one where it is relatively straightforward and safe. But if you make a mistake, you're going to have leaks, and that could be a big issue. So again, it's just knowing your abilities and kind of going from there. But there's always room for DIY in conjunction to or with or instead of. And that's a huge trend. I see plenty of people online who have no background and they just bootstrap it. And they're probably naturally gifted in a way to think spatially, to think concepts, design, the mathematics of carpentry and understanding how things work is very important. That is a skill. And they probably have a natural proclivity for that. And it just gets expressed because I want to tackle this project. I feel like I can do it. And they do. And that's awesome. We will also see these DIY accounts that are just, I'm a single mom, dad, whatever, and I decided to do built-ins, and boom, I did it. And I think those stories are great, and it gives you skin in the game in your own property, your own renovation, and there is kind of the sense of accomplishment that you get from doing a project like that we don't get a lot of these days. I say this a lot. The reason I like what we do is you get certain immediate gratification for completing a project. Same as like cutting your grass. When it looks bad and you go out there for an hour ish and you're all done, and you're like, wow, I did that. We're missing a lot of immediate gratification. So DIY is a great way to get that.
Okay. How important are permits?
Let
me tee that up a little bit, because
keep asking the question.
Because as a contractor and as a realtor, you're and as a homeowner, you're wearing multiple different hats as you're answering that question.
Yeah.
And it sort of comes down to, well, who are you most concerned about? And as the realtor aspect of this and trying to do it through that lens of home sales and this work, are you going to do, and we're going to talk about how some of this work affects resale, right?
Yeah.
But what I want to talk about most is, I have a lot of buyers who buy a home and there's totally work that has happened that's not permitted. And we get caught in the crosshairs. Maybe we push and say, hey, we are unwilling to take on this home without a permit being pulled on that project. And so we may push back on some items. There may be other things where somebody went out and they built an entire deck and they said, well, no, I didn't pull a permit. But when we have a home inspection, they did everything by the book. It's perfect.
To code. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess, answer this from that couple different hats of, how obviously permits from a contractor standpoint, you should always permit every permittable work. But there are some DIY things that you may skip the permit. So just what's your kind of thought process behind permits, and where are the bookends of where
I agree. We always recommend, as a default, we always recommend pulling permits for the work. It's something that is important for checks and balances in New Jersey. So I make the joke a lot that the two professions I'm in, real estate and renovations, it's a relatively low bar of entry in the state of New Jersey. So real estate, we know, B18, pass a criminal background check, take the course, pass the state exam, and congratulations, you can go help people in the biggest purchase of their life or sale. Similarly, in renovations in New Jersey, it's B18, get insurance, file for your license, and congratulations, you can do the work. And I think that a lot of people have experiences with contractors that were not reputable and that, put a bad taste in their mouth. And so we deal with that because people can get pretty tense and, they've had a bad experience with a contractor. And so whether we did anything wrong or not, there's going to be a little leery of trust because they've got to have trust issues because someone's burned them in the past, whether they took money and didn't show back up, or they did the work poorly and didn't show back up, or there was a fight at the end about what was supposed to be done. The communication wasn't good. It happens a lot. And so, I think that specifically permits are always very important because there is a checks and balances that is done at your local level when you're doing the work to make sure plumbing is correct, electrical is correct, HVAC's correct, the framing's correct. The safety of your home depends on it. So I think it's a good thing for that reason. But you also bring up the other point where, for the resale of the home or for any kind of questions about stuff, if you have an agent who's pursuing a property and they notice in listing photos, this is different, and it's not different where it's a surface remodel. Things have been significantly changed here. That could be a flag. And so it could be a negative for you if you're going to sell your house later and the work's not permitted. And there's no way of knowing if it was, quote, done correctly, right? Sadly, agents are going to know by looking at old listing photos if there's a big change that was made. And to give context for everyone, if you are moving electrical, moving plumbing, moving HVAC, or adding it new, and if you're moving walls, if you're moving framing or adding new, those are all things that should be permitted and all things that need to be checked on. And that's going to pop up on a home sale in most cases, not in every case. And if the changes are small and maybe they could fly under the radar, that's okay. But if you see a picture of a deck, if you see a picture of a house without a deck and you're looking at a house with a deck, hey, it's pretty obvious that a deck was added here, and there's no permit for it. And so things can be permitted after the fact. You can pull a permit after the fact. And a deck's a great example. I love to use that because that's one where you can literally just check the whole thing out and see if it was built correctly. The only thing you're not going to be able to know is how deep are the footings. Are they the depth that they're supposed to be? But pretty much everything else, you'll know if the framing is correct, structurally, if it's built the way the New Jersey Code says. But it is an important piece, and we always recommend it.
I will say, as an agent, early in my career, I wasn't doing this all the time anymore. I'm sending an Oprah request in almost after a first showing if I know the buyer even has strong interest. And an Oprah is an Open Public Records Act, and that basically means that anybody can pull a full residential permit history of a property. And a lot of times, what I'm looking for the Oprah is not necessarily what's on it. I'm looking for what's not there. I'm looking for the stuff when I say, and he's right. Any agent, you're going to go to an old list. You're going to go into the history, take a look at what it was. You're going to cross-reference the two photos today, and you're going to look for any work that you believe needed to be permitted. And I'm pulling that Oprah, and then when we go into this, I may have that Oprah before we even get out of attorney review. And in that sense, I'll say, hey, look, it looks like there's 3 projects here that there's no permits on file with the township, not even opened or in process permits. And it looks like this work is done. Before we get out of attorney review, we may want to add language to this contract that any work completed from the seller's ownership must be permitted. We try and get ahead of that. All right, let's talk. I want you to demystify something for me. I've been doing a lot of research, and one of the things that I'm coming across a lot is that most projects that homeowners do have a net negative effect on resale value, right? So, like the classic example, I spent $50,000 on a kitchen, and it didn't increase the price of my home by $50,000. It might have only increased the price of my home by $25,000.
Right.
And so you're sitting there like, okay, that's like a 50% return on investment.
Right.
But at the same time, if that were true for every project, especially done at scale, no one would flip homes.
Right.
So there's sort of this break-even point where it's like, okay, if you're just doing one big project, it probably won't net you a net positive. But if you're going to stack a couple of these bigger projects together, that could be a net positive because you're actually like quantum changing what this house has to offer in the entire condition. So talk me through sort of like the individual renovation and the resale aspect of that versus when you find that it actually is going to be a positive because you can stack more projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question specifically for folks that are looking to sell. What am I going to do to increase the value of my home? Now, it is a misconception that if I spend your example of $50,000 on a kitchen, my home is magically going to be worth $50,000 more the next day. And that's not the case. In most cases, when you do something like a kitchen upgrade, if you're going from 1980s kitchen to a modern kitchen today, you're going to see most of that value back in the list price or the market value of the home. You're not going to see all of the value immediately. But if this is a 5, 10, 20-year home, you're going to see that, okay? But the expectation of, hey, I put 50,000 in, and oh wait, my home is only worth 45,000 more or 40,000 more because of this. It's not an immediate net gain. In the case of flippers, they're doing very specific searches for very specific properties in specific condition, knowing that I'm only going to spend X amount of dollars on typically contractor grade, lower grade materials to make it look nicer, update the house, present it, nicely, and in some cases, not even do the work well, and or solve every problem that the house has. So there is a lot of flippers out there, or there are a lot of flippers out there that do really great work. They update things nicely, and they make sure that everything inside the house, structurally, mechanically, everything's working properly. But we've been through properties where, one of the things that I can use, and I'll give you this tip too, as you're looking through houses, is I always look for the finishes. Were the finishes done well, or were they rushed? Because most times you can see what level of care was taken in this renovation project. How much money were they willing to spend? Are there other things lingering that maybe weren't taken care of? And so for me, I'm looking at the light fixtures look like they were installed properly. Is a tile work good quality tile work? Because there's a massive difference between good quality tile work and a handyman special type of a tile installation. Also, all the sheetrock, if it's been taped and spackled properly, finished properly. If it's new work, it shouldn't have nail pops, shouldn't have cracks, shouldn't have any of that stuff. The tape joints should be tight. You shouldn't be able to see them. And all the trim work as well. If we're looking at, if you've got some kind of wainscoting or you've got trim, window door casing or baseboards, if the joints aren't tight, if it looks shoddy, if there's gaps that fill with caulk because it just wasn't done properly, all really good indications that, hey, maybe I should look closer at other things in this house because this work was clearly not done to a certain standard.
Okay. Well, we're kind of at our end here,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to just basically bring this back to you and your company and sort of some of your experience. Can you give me maybe one of the most positive experiences you've had working as a contractor and how that impacted maybe a family or a situation?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we do a lot of work in people's homes, and it impacts their daily life. So a lot of work that we do in the kitchen is life changing for a family because they've been living a certain way for a long period of time, haven't had the amenities, haven't had the ability to live the life that they want, or just really changing their space functionally. Um, the most impactful projects we've done have been for families who had a need that was such a need, and when it was met, it changed their life. And so the example I'll give is actually a real estate and a renovation. There's a family who trusted us to not only update their parents' house, the parents had passed, it was an estate sale. They trusted us to update the house and then sell it for them. And this was, it was an emotional process. But they felt that the right thing to do was to get the highest and best value for the property. Mom and dad would really appreciate if we took care of this and it was sold instead of letting someone else have the opportunity to update it. We wanted to update it and net positive on their estate. And so we did that. That's the kind of project where someone's so grateful. There's tears in their eyes. They're giving you a hug, and there's appreciation not only when you're doing the renovation project, but also at the closing table. So, part of our job is just meeting needs and finding solutions. And depending on the level of the solution and where it kind of hits in the heart or the head, it elicits an emotion, and I got choked up with that one. I had to say, hey, you better stop it because you're going to get me going. But that's the great side of this. Updating a home for a family who's moving and they need a new place to live and they want to invest in this, and then it's life changing for them. So that's the positive side of that, and that's really it's why we do what we do, to have a really good positive impact on someone's living situation, making it better, improving their life and quality of life, and also what they can do and how they can enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, that's going to basically do it. I think that was a fantastic final answer because I always think of homes in terms of hard benefits and soft benefits. And the hard benefits are it's got 4 walls, I can lock the doors, it's a space for a bed, right? These are just the things human beings have needed in the
safe,
years.
secure,
right?
Protect you from the elements.
But the soft benefits are, can I go to bed knowing that my 2 kids are upstairs, right up this stairwell, and I know that I'm protecting them from my version of the way the home should be laid out. Or before we had this really cramped kitchen, and when we did that blowout, I can have my entire family here. I've never been able to host Thanksgiving dinner, and I have my mom over, who's in her 60s or 70s, and she can come over and do dinner here, and I don't have to see her do it at her house. And I transformed my space to allow for those types of things to happen. So that's where I see this marriage of sort of real estate and the renovation world, and that, especially in a market like we're in today, where affordability is hard. We're coaching a lot of clients to say, hey, look, you may want to go for that perfect creme de la creme, everything finished house, but so does everybody else. And it's also at the top of your budget and you can barely afford it. So what if we went for that house, maybe a price or 2 below in tiers, but we can have the vision to, over the next 18 months, 24 months, make this house into something where I would get the same benefit out of a big house like that. So, David, why don't you tell everybody how everybody can reach you from a renovation standpoint and from a real estate standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is pnhrenovations.com. You can see our work there. You can learn more about us, and you can connect with us via the Contact Us page. And for real estate, we're actually making a switch here soon in the real estate group. Name-wise, right now we are the Bales Group at Keller Williams Morristown. Soon, you'll see some more information about us, known as North Point Real Estate Group at Keller Williams Morristown. We're excited about that change. And that website will be northpointsells.com.
All right, everybody. If you ever have any questions on what we cover here today, obviously you can reach out to me. I love if everybody works with me as a realtor, but David and his team, they are fantastic. I would say if I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine. Go work with David. They are tremendous at what they do from both. So, David, thank you very much for today, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.